of championship drag racing and regarded by many of his peers as one of the premier drivers ever to take a car down a straight line racetrack for a quarter of a mile distance. Segrini has tasted victory on this racing surface. He won the Winter Nationals earlier this year. He won the same event a year ago. So he is no novice to this sport of drag racing. The escape hatch is closed, the latches are thrown, and Segrini approaches the starting line. McEwen already there and waiting. Both cars inch forward, and it is instant tire smoke for McEwen. The car losing traction, and Segrini with an easy go. He's almost got a single run, but Segrini off the pace with a 6:11, 244 miles an hour. McEwen, I'm certain, very dejected inside that Corvette-bodied car. He pulls out wide to take the first turnoff off this quarter-mile racetrack. And it will have to be another day for Tom McEwen to win the Winston World Finals. Al Segrini, though, advances into the semifinals, while back at the starting line, the terrible towel continues to hide something. Whatever it is, they aren't telling the secrets. Kenny Bernstein, the driver, Dale Armstrong, the crew chief, and as you can see, ever so elusively, the crewman pulls the towel off just as the body goes down over Kenny Bernstein, the man that has won the Winston World Champion title this year. The Budweiser King is scheduled to race the Skoal Bandit, Tim Gross. Earlier in round number 1, Gross in the near lane was racing the Miller Warrior of Dale Pulde. That's a Buick Somerset Regal body, the fiberglass replica body that is gracing the funny car of Pulde and Mike Hamby. It was a tremendous race, very close, and at the finish line, just by a margin of inches, Tim Gross pulls out the win. But it was a very expensive win, the engine damage unable to be repaired, and the Budweiser King, Kenny Bernstein, gets a break. His competitors say Bernstein doesn't need a break, but this single will advance Bernstein into the semifinals. One of the technical advances of Bernstein and his crew that has been copied by many other racers is the onboard computer. Here's Steve.
Now, the computer only weighs about 1.5 pounds, but the stories that it can tell. It monitors 6 individual functions of the car at 40 readouts per second. Everything from engine RPM to fuel pressure, blower pressure, the position of Kenny's throttle foot, and it monitors the performance of both magnetos. This is the very first thing that Dale Armstrong, the crew chief, does, is come back, debrief this computer, take all of this database, and figure out how to set up the car for the following round. Now, Kenny is making this technology now available to everybody for a round figure of about $3,000. But what's under that dirty little towel, we'll never know.
Steve, we really hope that you might be able to find out for us. But whatever it is, it's got the competition talking, worrying, and it certainly may have or may not have an effect on the performance of the Budweiser King. Our next pair of cars doing the burnout in the near lane is the Chief Auto Parts 711 Ford Mustang of Billy Meyer. In the far lane, Ron Correnti driving the Captain Crazy Ford Thunderbird. For Billy Meyer, he's never driven anything but a funny car in professional drag racing competition. Ron Correnti, the latest driver for Bill Dunlap of Captain Crazy Racing, has got a relatively new car, this bright silver-painted Ford Thunderbird, one of the first T-Birds in the funny car circuit. Billy Meyer would like to end 1985 on a stronger note than he started. He destroyed 2 cars in massive engine explosions in the very early parts of the season. That set his effort back a long ways through all of 1985. But here he is in round number 2 at the World Finals, racing against Ron Correnti. Meyer in the near lane, Correnti in the far lane, and Correnti pulls about a car length ahead. Can Meyer come back to catch him? No, but Ron Correnti smokes an engine. His car owner, Bill Dunlap, is ecstatic with the victory. That puts Correnti in the semifinals, and the Ford T-Bird defeats the Ford Mustang. Correnti over Meyer. As we watch again, no tire smoke off the starting line. Both drivers with the power and clutch combination just right. But at the finish line, he's got about a car length lead. That's Ron Correnti in the silver T-Bird. Watch as the engine starts to let go. It begins to give him problems, and then a huge cloud of smoke as he starts to cross the finish line. Ron Correnti and the crew congratulating each other, but knowing when they go back to the pit area, there's nothing but work and a lot of hard effort awaiting them. Already hard at work is Don Prudhomme and his crew as they lift that record-holding aluminum racing block out of the chassis. Some problems with it on its last run. That's the motor that went 264 miles an hour in a funny car, and it is being pulled off to the side and replaced. That means that Prudhomme will go into the semifinals with another engine between the frame rails. Will it be as good as the previous one? We'll have to wait and see. The next in our series of World Finals flashbacks takes us to Amarillo, Texas. The year 1971, the winning Top Fuel driver that year was Jerry Glenn. Speeds had increased to 227 miles an hour. The crowd's just as enthused then as they are today. There were still a lot of the front-engine Top Fuel dragsters. In fact, the bulk of the field was made up of the Top Fuel cars. There's Steve Carboni. He won the world champion title back in 1969. The story in 1971 centered around one car and one driver. That was Don Garlits, who had debuted earlier that year, the first ever successful rear-engine dragster. Today, he's the world champion. Let's go back now to the Don Prudhomme pit area and Steve Evans.
Don, you set the speed record but may have paid the price, huh?
Yeah, it's really hard on it. You know, those 260 mile an hour runs, it's very hard on the bottom end, it seems like, and I made the decision to change it because you're looking for big trouble. You know, you can spit the whole bottom end out or break a crankshaft or something, and win, lose, or draw, it's best to change the motor.
While the work continues in Don Prudhomme's pit area on the starting line, Top Fuel dragsters are set for the semifinal round. Gary Ormsby will be in the far lane, while in the near lane will be Frank Bradley. Ormsby, in the previous round, had a tremendous upset and an outstanding elapsed time as he defeated Don Garlits with a 5.49 second run. He wants to try to duplicate that. Frank Bradley would like to parlay a smooth driving job off the starting line and a little bit of an improved performance level out of his Jolly Rancher Candy special to take him into the finals. We'll find out in just a few seconds who will make it as Ormsby stages last in the far lane. And is Ormsby out first? A tire-smoking run like days of old for Frank Bradley. For crew chief Lee Beard and his owner-driver Gary Ormsby, they're facing a lot of work, but they're also facing a final round appearance. As we look back again, you see Ormsby and Bradley. The Christmas tree goes green. They leave the starting line almost together, but it's instant tire smoke for Bradley. He's out of the race. Let's go to Gary Ormsby.
It didn't pull quite as hard on the top end that time.
You have to work on it between rounds.
Yeah, it looks like we'll have to do a little work.
The racetrack, is it holding up for you?
Yeah, it seemed to be. I didn't feel it get loose at all out there, and it pulled real good except for the top end.
Frank Bradley smoked the tires early on.
I thought something happened because I didn't see him out there at a ways, and I figured he either smoked the tires or shut it off.
Okay, Gary Ormsby, that's one half of the Top Fuel final.
And Steve, Gary Ormsby ran 5.56 seconds at over 251 miles an hour. And here in the Miller American Special of Larry Minor is Gary Beck. Their massive crew had a tremendous task confronting them between rounds. They had to fix the transmission.
You're looking at Gary Beck's crewman Terry Caldwell installing the transmission in this Top Fuel dragster. We've said before that the driver makes one gear change. Well, this is how it is done. It's an aluminum case, and much like a Model T Ford, believe it or not, has planetary gears in it, far more stronger than the old Model T, along with a clutch pack. And the clutch pack enables the drivers to change the ratio of the transmission. 30% underdrive, 35, clear up to 60% underdrive if you'd use one in a pro stock car. Now, all he does is push a button because there are air bottles that force the transmission to shift, and bolted to the back of the transmission, the long lever you see is the reverser.
And as Gary Beck backs into position, his competition is nowhere to be seen. Gene Snow is trying to get the engine started. The crew working diligently over it, but nothing happening. The engine trying to fire, but it's not working right. And Snow just throws up his hand and shakes his head. He says he doesn't know. Gary Beck does another burnout. That gives Snow even more time. And the crew looking it over, some helpers coming around trying to offer suggestions. But Snow looking, and that's a terrible position to be in, sitting in front of the motor. Everybody behind you working, and you can't tell what's happening. Gary Beck, though, knows that he is yet to see his competition, and the crew looking at it, trying to figure out what is the problem. They're working around the ignition system, seeing if that may be the difficulty. And while the work goes on, Gary Beck's engine continuing to run, and there will be a point where there will be no more time for Gene Snow. The crew now appearing to take the magneto apart. But for Gary Beck, he is into the staging beams, and Gene Snow out of competition, the engine unable to fire. Now, Gary Beck has got to take a shot at the elapsed time of 5.56 seconds if he wants lane choice. He streaked through the quarter mile. His elapsed time, 5.55 seconds. By 100th of a second, he gets lane choice. And Gene Snow out of his car, taking off his protective uniform. And there has got to be disappointment in that man's heart. He had run 5:49 earlier today for the quickest elapsed time of his career. That sets up our finals in Top Fuel. It is Gary Ormsby against Gary Beck. The next in our series of historical flashbacks on this Winston World Finals takes us to Ontario, California, and the famed Ontario Motor Speedway. From 1974 to 1980, OMS played host to the Winston World Finals, and if there was a finer racing facility built anywhere in the world, we have yet to see it. OMS was host to many all-time firsts, the first ever Top Fuel World Champion crown won by a woman driver, Shirley Muldowney. It also saw the many-time champion Don Prudhomme continue his string of victories. Ontario Motor Speedway, like Dallas International and so many others, is gone today, but will never be forgotten. Back here at Pomona, California, this is the World Finals, and Gene Snow had some problems.
Well, Gene Snow, after all the smiles from the 5:49 in the second round, then you sat bolted into the cockpit, totally frustrated.
Well, we had the magneto in wrong and no way it could ever start, and that certainly is frustrating. We hadn't even hurt the motor on the run before the 5:49.
Well, you're not the first crew to ever put it in 180 degrees out. That's happened to a lot of racers.
Yeah, it happens. We discussed it. I said after we leaked the motor and it leaked good, I said we got two choices. We can take it apart and be sure it's right, but also at the same time take a chance of doing something wrong when we put it back together. Or we can go ahead and run it and maybe have missed something. So we elected to take it apart, and gosh, it's just one of those things that happen.
A tough break for Gene Snow, but we'll see him again, that's for sure, as that 5.49 second elapsed time shows he's got the performance level to race with the best. Here's another man that can. This is Al Segrini driving for Joe Pisano, but he is up against the best this season. Kenny Bernstein and a Budweiser King. His crew chief, Dale Armstrong. This is the man that Kenny gives all the credit to. He says, without the genius of Armstrong, he'd just be another funny car racer. But Armstrong and Bernstein have made an unbeatable combination throughout 1985 that has carried him to the Winston World Champion title. Joe Pisano developed a new racing engine. He debuted it earlier this season on this same racetrack, and Al Segrini, his driver, won the first race ever for that power plant, but it is not to be on this round as Kenny Bernstein and the Bud King move into the finals. 5.62 seconds, his speed 257 miles an hour. Dominance in racing and Kenny Bernstein. Those two phrases have been synonymous throughout this entire 1985 season. Back at the starting line, the engine is running in the Wendy's Pepsi car of Don Prudhomme. The Pontiac Trans Am body coming down over the supercharger and fuel injector as Prudhomme pulls away from beside his support vehicle into the water burnout area. He is scheduled to race Ron Correnti, but there's no one there. Correnti is back in the pit area with problems. We saw in the previous round where Correnti beat Billy Meyer, but on the run there was a lot of smoke come out of the engine as he crossed the finish line in the Ford Thunderbird of Bill Dunlap. For Ron Correnti, his racing day is over. Let's go back to the pits and Steve Evans.
That little bit of black on the otherwise shiny crankshaft journal in Ron Correnti's motor is the reason he's not right now on the starting line to race Don Prudhomme. That's enough to cause you not to run this motor.
Oh, yeah. It got a little lean last run, right down to the lights. I felt it lay over, and that's one of the hazards of the business, you know. We expect that every once in a while, and it just happened at that time.
And you didn't find that black on the crank in time to change?
No, it was in fact, it was the last rod that came out. I couldn't believe it. We pulled all the rods out, and everything looked fine until we got to that one, and then consequently we had to change motors and we ran out of time.
Well, I know Don Prudhomme doesn't miss you up there, but we do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
A big disappointment for driver Ron Correnti and his car owner Bill Dunlap as they made it to the semifinals but unable to answer the call. Don Prudhomme gets the single. Is he going to take a shot at the 562 of Bernstein? No, he does not. Prudhomme with a 583, 213 miles an hour, gives away lane choice to Bernstein, but for the first time in quite some time, Don Prudhomme in the finals against the Bud King Kenny Bernstein. Here's Pro Stock Eliminator. In the near lane, it is Bruce Allen driving the Rare and Morrison Camaro out of Arlington, Texas, against Ken Dondero driving for his car owner, Bob Panella. The Pontiac Firebird of Dondero has got his work cut out for him as racing against the Rare and Morrison Camaro, the leading proponents of Chevrolet, with Bruce Allen at the wheel. Allen took over the driving chores for the late Lee Shepard earlier this season after Shepard was fatally injured in a testing accident. The semifinals of Pro Stock find the Firebird in the far lane, the Camaro in the near lane,